So we're still playing five-handed. I believe. Who busted first? I forget who's busted first. Anyway, someone busted first. And here we are. So we're playing five-handed. There are points in play. Blinds are 600, 1200. So the players are quite short. Looking around the table, we have Igor Kurganov has 41,000 chips. That's a lot. Dmitry has 17,000, which is not very many. Wei has 26,000. Walter has 35,000. Davidi has 26,000. So everybody's pretty short. We are playing short stack poker here. I imagine this game will not last too much longer. Welcome everyone who is here. We have Dream Cage, Gary Hotmail, Kessler, Lucky Eva. Hello, hello, hello. If you all have any questions, feel free to ask. But anyway, let's take a look. Sound may be a tad on the quiet side. Well, I don't think I can do anything about that. Maybe I can push this up. Maybe? No. I have a big microphone here. But it doesn't seem to be cooperating. Hopefully it works. All right, so 9-8 offsuit on the button with 22 big blinds, 23 big blinds. I like the fold, I think. Looks like I'm short. Something like a centimeter too high. No? All right, so now blind versus blind. I think I'd probably just shove in Walter's shoes. Davidi can't really call too often. Clearly it would not work out because Pocket Jacks is going to call you. But this is a scenario where I think Davidi has to call off very, very tightly. And for that reason, I think Walter probably just wants to shove. It is a big shove, but this is a hand that you cannot play well at all from out of position. But if you do play it from for an all-in, you make position irrelevant. He likes to limp, though. I'm kind of curious as to if he's going to limp call or limp shove with this. I would probably limp shove. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird for Davidi to raise. You wouldn't think Davidi would raise too often in this spot. Because, like, why would he pick the big stack to try to push around? It just doesn't make sense. My computer's overheating over here. Chill out, computer. Chill out. All right, so anyway, Walter does go for the limp shove. And I'm okay with this. I don't really have a problem with this play, but Davidi's known to be kind of aggressive and pretty active, but I don't know if he's raising in this spot with total air. Oh, look. Let's hear what these people have to say. They're probably analyzing the same thing I just said, so we're not going to pay too much attention to them. But I like the limp shove. I think it's fine. I think it's a little bit unlucky that he ran into Pocket Jacks there. But the main time that's really an issue is whenever Davidi is only raising with very good hands. And that could just be the case. If he's only raising with good hands, then limp shoving is not such a good strategy. But if he's raising all sorts of crap, then it's great. All right, so kind of interesting here. So let's rewind it a split second. If we can. If I was in Davidi's shoes, I would definitely limp the ace-3 offsuit, probably looking to limp call. If he raises, he has to assume Igor is going to call very wide. And from out of position, I don't really think ace-3 offsuit is going to play so well in a raised pot. So I think I would probably just limp this. And I'm limping with a lot of hands. We talked about this on pokerstrategy.com recently. It seems like that webinar that we had discussing small blind strategy versus good players when it folds around to you is going to be very relevant for the Global Poker League because people know not to raise the button with 4-2 offsuit, for example. Pretty sweet spot for Igor to bet small. If he gets raised, he can continue if he feels like it. And he does bet tiny, and Davidi just loses the pot, right? And that's an example of what I was just saying, where if you raise, you're going to get called a lot, then you can't really play well. Hopefully there are no buffering issues. I see it says I have 0 drop frames. Hopefully it's working. I just got out of the bath. I'm loving life. So now I'm going to drink a bunch of cold water. GPL is now hosting. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, GPL. Here you have ace-6 offsuit open for min raise, and Dimitri elects to jam. This is always a pretty nasty spot with ace-6 offsuit. I think you have to call, but you're not loving it. One thing worth mentioning is Dimitri just kind of put it in here. I don't really know if that means anything. Maybe he does this with his whole range. Maybe he just knows which hands are playable and he goes with all of them. Yeah, I think you just have to call the ace-6. You don't love it, but you're getting reasonable pot odds. And I imagine Dimitri should be shoving a lot of suited connectors, a lot of big cards, just like Broadway hands. So I think ace-6 offsuit is going to be an okay shove. Or I'm sorry, an okay call. He does like to call off. Do we need to equalab this? I guess we'll equalab this. Let's see. Oh, nope, not games. Poker's not a game. Poker goes in the poker folder. We'll load up equalab real quick. So he had to put in 12,000 to try to win 33, I believe. So the way you figure this out, get out the calculator. One of the most useful programs for solving poker is this device here, Standard Calculator. All right. Standard Calculator. So we have to do roughly, I think it was something like 13 divided by 33 total. So he needs to win 39% of the time to break even with this ace-6 offsuit. Does that sound right? Yeah. So he needs to win, we'll call it 40% to break even. There are some payout implications, but you know, we'll kind of ignore them for the time being. So ace-6 offsuit. Which hands do we think Dimitri is shoving? I'm not going to read into his timing tells at all. I think he's probably shoving all pairs, all ace-x suiteds, all big Broadway hands, all these suited connectors. Maybe something like this is kind of tight. And you see here, ace-6 offsuit has 44% equity. So if he's kind of tight, ace-6 offsuit's just a call. Let's say we actually make him very tight. We're trying to find a spot where he would have to fold this, right? Like how tight does he have to be shoving to justify folding ace-6 offsuit? So pretty snug. He basically, if he's not shoving every ace-x, you can justify folding. That's kind of what it amounts to. But I imagine he is shoving all ace-x's here. Gym is at 6 p.m. now, my wife says. Well, that's no good. We're streaming today. We are doing the home game today. If you have not signed up, is it that way? No, it's that way. Home game information is right up there. Here's the information below. I decided to not do the home game league until January. What I'm going to try doing is we're going to try, giving a little bit of extra bonuses on top for first place prize. I just had a book come out recently. I guess we'll show you the book real quick. Just had a book come out. It's called Bluffs. Has 1 review on Amazon, 5 stars. That's always nice. I'd like to get lots of reviews up there. But so on top of the regular prizes that you can find at jonathanlowepoker.com for the home game this week, we'll also be giving away a PDF copy of Bluffs. How to intelligently apply aggression to increase your profits from poker. So we will be giving away one of those, PDF version. Here's the physical version. It is a real book, as you can see. It's about 200 pages. So yeah, it's a good book. I'm happy with it. Anyway, we'll continue going through the game. I believe they just gave Davidi a walk there. I think he had 9-8 offsuit. I definitely would have shoved 9-8 offsuit if they fold to me blind versus blind. Of course, Davidi had a lot of chips, but 9-8 offsuit is going to be good enough to shove. So Dimitri opens king-9 suited. I think this is fine. I imagine Davidi's going to defend for one more big blind. Don't know why I wouldn't. But he folds. Wow. It's a little bit tight. That's a scenario where I'm really surprised Davidi did not defend because he had to put in one more big blind from out of position with a crappy hand. I totally get that. 1 second. That was a spot where, let's see if I can rewind it just a second. He has to put in one more big blind to try to win 1, 2, 3, 3.5 big blinds, 4 big blinds. Wow. I'm shocked he folded this actually with 10-6 suited. 10-6 suited is not good, but he's getting very good pot odds. And Walter here makes it to where Dimitri really cannot justify splashing around too much because it's just such a huge disaster for Dimitri to go broke. I actually don't think shoving would be ridiculous for Davide. This is how you really lean on the opponents and put them in miserable scenarios. I think if you just shove here, it's going to steal the pot a ton. And there's Dimitri cannot really call off too wide. There's actually a program called ICMizer. I'm afraid to use it because it takes a lot of computer resources, and Twitch plus the recording program is usually enough to kill my little laptop. But you can check it out at jonathanlowpoker.com/ICM. And I believe it'll tell you that shoving there is actually pretty sweet because I don't think Dimitri can call you very often at all. This is another spot where I think shoving's pretty sweet with ace-2 offsuit. And I actually would not hate a shove from Igor. Igor's for sure going to defend. One thing worth mentioning is I do not think that you want to be min-raising into people like Igor and Davide. They like to fight. Well, I say they like to fight. Davide is folded to the min-raise. But I think in general, you don't want to be min-raising with anything because these players are going to call you very, very wide. I think you'd much rather put them in 3-bet or fold spots, or at least call a bunch of chips out of position and then have to fold. So I don't really like this. Now, Davide does a re-raise, a small re-raise. The main time this 3x re-raise is better than a shove is when you expect Zhang to never shove on you as a bluff. So Davide's re-raising here to fold if he gets shoved on. And I think you have to assume your opponent's generally weak to justify this play. I think a lot of very good players are going to shove here with a lot of just various stuff, thinking that you will fold only for another 15,000 or so. And I don't think you want to open that door for your opponents. I think you're just going to be better off shoving and stealing the pot, who knows, a ton, maybe like 70% of the time or more. I imagine Zhang's going to fold this one, though. This is a spot where Zhang actually should not be opening very wide at all. Mainly because, again, Walter's tiny stack is handcuffing Zhang to where these big stacks can just shove on Zhang or re-raise Zhang and put him in a horrible spot. Walter shoves. This is an interesting scenario because it's actually in both of these players' interest to bust Walter, because Walter is really messing around with Dimitri and Igor's potential to play their medium stack. Notice what happens if Walter goes away. All of a sudden now it's not such a disaster for Igor or Dimitri to go broke. But with Walter here, it is a disaster. So for that reason, I think Igor should call in this spot, and I actually think Dimitri should call as well with Queen 4 offsuit. He doesn't love it. Queen 4 offsuit's not amazing by any means, but I think this is a spot where the two middle stacks, it's called implicit collusion is what they used to call it. I don't know what the sit and go kids call it anymore. But basically the middle stacks know that the right strategy is to call and then pretty much only put money in the pot if you're going to bust the short stack. Because it's very, very beneficial to get the middle stack out of here. Even though Dimitri's probably making what may look like a slightly negative EV pre-flop call, it's probably not, because it's going to give him significantly more playability after the flop. And notice here, if a queen comes, this is kind of a weird spot because a spot that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to rationalize it, because Igor is going to win the vast majority of the time. But here, Dimitri does get a little bit of added benefit of winning whenever a queen comes and a 9 comes, and that would have perhaps busted Walter, whereas if now a 9 comes off, Walter doubles up, and this whole thing continues happening. Notice what would have happened here most likely is Igor would have called, Dimitri would have called, and it probably would have checked down to the river, and then Dimitri would have bet, won the pot. So I think it's a spot where you should not really expect the middle stack Igor to go too nuts. So I don't really like that fold pre-flop, even though it's certainly not a good hand. A lot of fun things happen with these middle stacks. All right, so now looking at the stack sizes, 2 stacks with 33,000 or so, which is 27 big blinds. And then Zhang, who's on a 16 big blind stack. So again, these two players don't really want to go broke before Zhang. But at the same time, it's not so bad because Zhang has some chips. It's not like Zhang is drawing very dead. If the stream's working, please let me know. If it's not working, that's bad for me. We will be on a 3-minute delay until I bust from our home game. If you've not signed up for the home game already, make sure you do. You know what? I better make sure that I do. That seems like something I would forget to do. The way you sign up is you click on schedule, click on the game, which is right down here. 97 people signed up. I know there are more than that who play, so make sure you register. Click register, click OK. It says it costs $1, but it's one play dollar. Do not worry. And then you're in. So we're in. We're registered. We're ready to go. First place in this week's home game is $100 in credits to my training videos at jonathanlowpoker.com/training videos, a PDF of strategies for beating small stakes poker cash games, and a PDF of my newest book, Bluffs. It's a fun book. I like it. You will like it especially if you have a problem with bluffing, which I think a lot of amateur players do. All right. Zhang with Queen 10 offsuit should probably just fold this for the same reason as before, where if he raises, he's going to get jammed on and have to fold. But if he folds, maybe these guys fight. And they will this time, but this is a spot where I think he's going to get pushed around too much. You're going to find that whenever the big stack is directly on your left, it's really hard to do anything good. So for that reason, I think you just have to play somewhat snug. Zhang could shove. I think shoving's probably a little bit big. Haven't quite run the numbers on it, but I think shoving is probably a hair too big. I do think shoving is a lot better than min raising. And notice here, he did elect to shove, and Vidi folded ace-9, Igor folds ace-8, and Dimitri folds pocket 3. So if you are going to pick a play, shoving is definitely it. The problem with shoving is that whenever you do get called, you're usually pretty unhappy. So is Igor going to open the 8-3 suited? I think that would be pretty aggressive. Dimitri shoves Queen 7 suited. I think this is fine. This is a hand kind of like ace-3 offsuit. And with hands like that, you tend to want to shove because they are usually profitable shoves. But if you limp and get jammed on, you have to fold. If you raise and get jammed on, you have to fold. So shoving's usually an okay play. Jack 9 suited is actually pretty close to a call, but not quite. Especially with payout implications. I keep saying payout implications. The way this works is first place in this game gets 7 points in the league. Second gets 5. Third gets 3. Fourth gets 2. So there are payout jumps. Global Poker League is set to start back in, I believe, about a month. You can go to globalpokerleague.com. Actually, let's do it ourselves. globalpokerleague.com, if the internet will cooperate with us. Come on, internet. Okay, so the next game starts on September 20th. It says it right up here. Well, it's not letting me move it around. I promise. Next game starts September 20th, noon EDT. I don't know what noon EDT means, but it starts at noon EDT. All right. I imagine Zhang should just shove this as well. He's probably going to get some action from pocket 8s, though. Pocket 8s is a little bit too good to fold, mainly because your opponent will be shoving with a lot of ace X's. Whenever you have a hand, well, I guess this is sort of like a little trick. Whenever you are considering calling an all-in, you want to ask, which hands is my opponent shoving? And how many of those have me dominated? So say we think Zhang's shoving any ace X, any Broadway hand, maybe some good suited connectors, etc. All right, so take a look at this. Let's just ask ourselves, which of these hands do we dominate, right? We dominate all of these small pairs, and we lose to all the big pairs. So we're flipping, because notice half of them are above us, the other half are below us. We dominate half of the aces, right? All of these. And we are flipping against everything else. So take a look at this. We're flip against all of these hands. These are all the hands we're flipping against. So we flip against those. These pairs all cancel each other out, right? Because half of the time we're very dominated. The other half of the time they are very dominated. So now we're just left with this little bit of the range, which may not sound like much, but this is, it says right down here, 7% of hands, which is actually a third or 25% of our opponent's shoving range. So that percentage of the time your opponent's going to be drawing to 3 outs. So anytime you're looking at your hand and there's a reasonable part of your opponent's range that you dominate, and you are not dominated very often yourself, as you will not be with pocket eights, unless your opponent's only shoving good hands, you typically want to call. Instead, let's assume our opponent's range was very tight, right? Let's assume it was like this. Maybe something like this. Now you could actually justify folding the pocket eights, because notice we are dominated by all these and we're flipping against all these. So we dominate nothing. We're flipping against these and we're dominated by these. So that's kind of how you want to think about calling off sometimes if you are not 100% sure of how to go about it. Olive oil, 18 months in a row. Oh my goodness, I didn't know I've even been doing it for this long. Thank you for resubscribing. $100 reward. The $100 reward is in credits to my video products. I'm trying to get the words out of my mouth. Also, you get the 2 PDFs, including my newest book, Bluffs. It came out 2 days ago. All right. So anyway, pocket eights is a call. But yeah, Gary Hotmail, they moved it back a month for various reasons. They actually talked about it on their blog. You can follow Global Poker League on Twitter at GPL. They have, they post on there a pretty good amount, and they have blog posts that discuss everything they have going on. All right, so now what's happening is Davidi has 80,000 chips. I imagine you cannot see this. Davidi has 80,000 chips. These two players both have 30-something thousand. So Davidi's going to be opening a ton, as he should. Notice Igor did not jam the king-queen. If the blinds were a bit higher, I think he would have. But with these stack sizes, I actually like just calling and not putting your whole stack in. Nope, let's go back to the game. Let's go back to the game, guys. Okay, here we go. Kind of cool. Davidi makes a very miniature bet. It seems like a lot of players in the GPL are really utilizing these very small bets. I probably need to do this a little bit more. Yeah, so that's worth mentioning. I do not have a ton of experience with these really tiny bets. I mean, I have experience with third pot bets, but you're seeing a lot of 20% pot bets or 15% pot bets in the GPL, which is kind of cool. It's always good to see fun new lines. I actually have a blog post coming out soon discussing what happens whenever you base your bet size on your hand. It's kind of a complicated post. I've been told by a few of my peers not to post it because they think it's too advanced, but we're doing it anyway. So make sure you check out jonathanlopoker.com/blog. That'll be coming out either Monday or the next Monday. I think it's a week from now, maybe 2 weeks from now. But anyway, I'm considering writing a book on how to learn to put players on ranges. I think Igor should shove this, by the way. If you're interested in something like that, let me know. I'm surprised Igor did not jam this. The problem with not jamming this is your hand's going to play somewhat poorly, even in position, because you're going to flop top pair bad kicker most of the time. So I think you'd rather just shove this. Kind of interesting. I actually thought Davidi might give up on this flop, because this is a horrible flop. And that it should hit, at least what I perceive to be Igor's calling range, very hard. But anyway, the range book was going to effectively take you from knowing nothing about ranges to discussing how to put people on ranges pre-flop, how to play on the flop, and then having relatively advanced hands. By the time you get to the river, you should have some reasonable idea of what your opponent has. And It'll also discuss like general game theory optimal strategy so that you don't get to the river with total garbage every time. And that's what happens sometimes when you do make various bet sizes based on your hand strength. So whenever you see these players making small bets, I'm not entirely sure they're balanced. And we will pay attention and see maybe we can pick up things on some players as we move forward. Davide, again, just continuing to bulldoze the table. I imagine Dimitri's going to shove. He does shove. That seems good. I'm kind of surprised Igor called the ace-4 offsuit. Like, I think calling a hand like ace-10 would be way better there than calling with ace-4, because ace-10 at least has the potential to make the nuts. And that ace-high is going to be able to call on a lot of flops, because it's going to have overpairs a ton at the time. But not ace-4. All right, so kind of interesting here. Dimitri limped, and now Igor just rips it on him with pocket fives. Wow. Wow. All right, so I think Dimitri's probably supposed to fold this. Let's just look at his raw equity. What hands is Davide jamming with? Let's assume he's jamming the standard range of small pairs, random big cards that are not quite good enough to check, or hands that you just prefer to jam with. You know what? I think he's going to have to call because there are too many ace-X's. Remember how we just talked about the ace-X issue? About how he's dominating much of hands? Take a look at ace-9, right? It dominates all these ace-X's and it's flipping against everything else. So I guess ace-9 is going to be a call in this spot. As nasty as that sounds. As you see, it has 60% equity. So pretty easy call versus this range. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this range. I think it's just a strong, unexploitable range. Let's assume he does it with everything, which I highly doubt. But if he does it with everything, then you'll see it actually gets way worse for the ace-9 because we're adding in a bunch of hands that dominate us. So anyway, Dimitri's, I think he should call here with the ace-9 offsuit. I think that's good. It's a good, strong strategy. Good, strong strategy. It's a tongue twister. For the streaming schedule, by the way, we'll be streaming tomorrow. Actually, I'll talk about that whenever we're finished with this game. But tomorrow, 9 a.m., Global Poker League stream. 9 a.m. Eastern time. All right, heads up. Davide versus Igor. Davide has a gigantic chip lead. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Whenever you are playing heads up, you can figure out the exact odds someone's going to win, assuming they both play equally well. You take the total chips you take the chips they have, divide it by the total chips in play, and they should win that percentage at the time. So, for example, Igor has 25,000 chips out of the 150 in play. So you do 25 divided by 150 equals. Igor should win about 16 or 17% of the time, assuming they both play equally well, which they're close enough. Interesting, Igor lips the ace-8 suited. I think this is probably a fine enough hand to raise get in, but he likes to limp. Oh, I remember seeing this hand the first time. Take a look at this hand. So Igor limps ace-8 suited. Early in the Global Poker League, this is the first game of the Global Poker League, so I don't think anyone knows what strategy people are using heads up or anything like this. So, Igor raises. I'm sorry, he limps. Davide checks. And then we have continuation bet 1 big blind and then check raise. Okay. Igor now re-raises minimum. So what is the guy's check, raise, re-raise, or miniature min bet, re-raise minimum range? What does that look like? I don't know. But I imagine it looks like a lot of very good draws and a lot of very good made hands. So how does ace-8 do against, how does 10-8 do against a lot of very good made hands? Well, you lose. How does it do a lot against a lot of very good draws? Well, you lose. You're flipping. So you're either flipping or you lose, assuming that is all that is in Igor's range. Igor may have hands like 9-8 and 8-7, but do those really want to min re-raise? Probably not. So Davide assumes, by folding, we can assume that Davide assumes this because he folded, that Igor is only making this play with the nuts. And sure enough, he does have the nuts. So really sweet fold by Davidi. I don't think I'm ever folding top pair here, but maybe he knows something about Igor. Maybe they have a lot of history such that Davidi knows that Igor loves min re-raising with premium hands. That's pretty ridiculous, though. That was a very big fold. I remember everyone was shocked when that happened. Like, oh my God, just folds top pair heads up, no problem. Davidi's sick. If you guys don't know Davidi, he plays great. All right, so limp min bet on the flop. That seems good. Igor is going to get taken for a ride on this hand, I assume. Stuck check calling the turn. Can't really fold turn here, I don't think. Now on the river, maybe you're supposed to fold. Tough spot. Certainly, Davidi should bet the river. He doesn't really lose too much. So how much should he bet? He goes all in. Wow, I don't think he should have gone all in. Unless he has, again, some history with Igor. The main time to go all in this spot is when you think Igor will call your all in very wide, perhaps just like any pair, because either he thinks you're crazy or he thinks you like to overbet primarily with bluffs, something like that. So interesting spot. I think I would probably fold if I was Igor, but I would certainly not fault him for calling because you would typically not put this king 8 into the shoving range. Usually when people shove there, they have a very strong hand, and you know, king 8's strong, but it's not super strong. All right, so here we have Igor shoving, 8-6 suited for 15 big blinds, gets snapped off by pocket queens, and that's going to be that, I bet. Maybe? Yes, that is that. So that was a pretty fun game. Lots of stuff was going on there, very short-handed. That really demonstrated in Zhang's shoes why Zhang has to be somewhat snug. And I think Zhang got punished a little bit. I also was kind of surprised by Davidi's play in a few spots where I thought he could have abused his bigger stack a little bit more. And I was kind of surprised by Igor's call just recently whenever he called with the ace-4 instead of jamming. So lots of plays I would not have made in that one. I don't know if those plays were good or bad, but they were made.